Hi, Lauren Grace, and welcome to The Afterlight. And I'm joined today by Rachel Roberts, who is an author as well as a sacred dance teacher, a priestess, women's empowerment coach, and a flower essence coach. Rachel is the creatrix of Wolf Women Rising, a wisdom school where she empowers you to embody your wisdom, reclaim your authentic, wild, untamed self, and create a life lived on purpose. Through online community, courses, and training, as well as in-person retreats and workshops, Rachel initiates women into the fine arts, nature, alchemy, and divine connection. And Rachel is joining me today to talk about awakening your wildest dreams. We're going to be talking about returning home to your body, working with the wolf archetype, as well as limiting beliefs. We're going to talk about what those are and how to overcome them so that you can live an authentic and purposeful life. Now, Rachel, welcome to the show. For our listener at home, you don't know this because I have taken 3 times to do Rachel's bio because it is 7 a.m. and I haven't had my coffee yet. So I'm going to have my coffee now, and that is going to give us a whole lot more probably enthusiasm and clarity for the rest of our conversation. Rachel, thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I thought it sounded great. You're
Well,
fantastic.
normally I'm a one take wonder, but not always, and not today. Well, that's okay. That just means that I need to just sit on back and just allow things to unfurl the way that they will. So thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really fascinated to talk about our subjects today. I've been doing this show now for quite a while, and I will say that I haven't had a lot of people discuss being in your body and really being comfortable with that. And I think that very often for even spiritual people, we're a lot of us on the soul path. We really identify with being the soul, but we're also here in a human vehicle. And I believe that being able to really connect to that is super important as we navigate through the world. I can't wait to get into that subject today, as well as explore all things wolf related, which I can see is a super big passion for you. So how did your spiritual journey begin?
So for me, it actually began with dance. So I think this is why I'm so big on embodiment, because I found my pathway to connect into my spirituality, to my soul, and to the divine through dance. So I actually began teaching dance at a very early age. So I was just 16 when I started teaching belly dance. And I found it was just destiny. It was just meant to be. And it was a real turning point for me, like an initiation moment where I was finding that, in society, as women, we're told to shame our body, to change our body. And this is one of the things I think leads to disconnect, is because we're told there should be this, should be that. We're constantly trying to modify it to make it better, to make it other than what it is. And for me, belly dancing told me that my body was sacred, exactly what it was. And I was learning to enjoy my body, and that pleasure, was a sacred act. It wasn't something dirty. It wasn't something that was for other people or to be done with other people. It was something that was mine and mine alone. And very early on, I was 18, I started teaching dance meditation because I wanted other women to have that, to have this experience of dance is bringing them back into their body, because we do so many things that are to actually disconnect us, to take us away from our body. And for me, my body's always been my answer to everything. That's a place I've always had to come back home to. So my spiritual path started with dance. And at the same time, history. So this is why I kind of combine the two together, the mythology and the dance. So it's kind of this combination, I suppose, of mind and body. And yeah, so that's where I began, and that's where I still am.
I think that, yeah, I love how you said, that's where you come home to, because I love those quotes, which is all about, your home is your body and where else do you live, and, all those sort of things. And it's so true. It's like we really are, we're in these vehicles for a reason. I believe personally that I chose the body that I'm in. And, I find that when we are not in our body, we're kind of, I guess I could say that with my experience, I find that I spend a lot of time in my head. So in the top chakras, and I learn a lot. And it's interesting because I know you're also an academic. So it's a cool blend that you have. I find that for me, I have to be really conscientious about doing things to bring me back into my body, because I always sort of feel like I hover above it, which sounds maybe
Yeah.
a little bit strange, but yeah. And when you're talking about dance, when I was in my, late teens and all through my 20s, I used to dance almost every weekend at the club. I wasn't doing, although I did take belly dancing actually a couple of times, which was
Ooh,
super cool and
fabulous.
fun. Yeah. And I do remember doing a meditation where I met my future self, and the prompt in the meditation was like, "Does she have any advice for you?" And my future self said, "Make sure you dance more." And so my dog and I often are known to have a breakout dance party in the middle of the day, just to kind of get me out of my head and bring me back into my body. How do you
Yeah.
find that? You kind of are able to navigate being a spiritual thinker as an academic as well. And do you find that, maybe the dancing and being in your body really helps you to kind of solidify all the information in a way that you can action it? Because I think many people, myself included, sometimes we miss that part. Yeah. How does it sort of work for you?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. So one of my kind of mottos, like my theme tune, really is about transmuting and transforming knowledge into wisdom. And they're kind of like the two sacred sisters, but I kind of think of knowledge as all of that stuff that we put into our heads. So all the things that we think about, that we learn, that we know, but do we really know it until we've actually experienced it? And experience is done in the body, through the body.
Yeah.
So that transmutation, it can only become wisdom when it is lived, when it's breathed. And our way of experiencing it is as human. We weren't born as a worm or a bird or a spirit or an elemental for this lifetime. You're in a body for a reason, and that's to experience being a human being. So we can have all this knowledge, and it's one of the things I found when I was doing my degree and my master's, was I was gaining all of this knowledge and all this stuff. And I thought to myself, well, what's the point of having all this stuff if it's not going to be used? To give knowledge that sacred purpose, it needs to become embodied. That's how it becomes wisdom. So you live it, you breathe it, you practice it. So even if you have, say in yoga, you have a theory, it's okay, very well, knowing that theory, or say knowing love, but you have to put it into action to actually really know it, to
Yeah.
make it something that you can talk about, that you can speak about, that you can live. It's kind of almost useless in your head. I think that we have to take it into our bodies to make it ours.
Yeah, beautifully said. And embodiment is exactly the word that I was looking for, because it's one thing to sort of know something, but it's another thing to really feel it and live it like you're talking about. So that was so well put. One of the things that I noticed is that, and for women in particular, because I do tend to work with a lot of women, as I believe you do as well, is that I think there's a lot of shame wrapped up in sometimes being in our bodies, in having to look a certain way, like you were talking about sort of off the top. I teach workshops, and one of the things that I have people do in some of them is mirror work, which, if you're not familiar with, you may be, but maybe our listener at home, it's when you legitimately look into a mirror and you talk to yourself, or you just gaze into your eyes. And I know Louise Hay was a huge advocate for mirror work, and when she was here, and I say here as in on the planet. And I remember, thinking that if I could assist women, the women that I'm working with, to really look at themselves, that they might see themselves in a different light. And I know for me, my relationship with my body has gone from one of really like hating my body to loving my body. And that was quite the journey, and quite the focused journey, I guess you could say. It was something that I really wanted to make sure that I did. And when I see some of these people in my workshops look at themselves in the mirror, some of them can't do it. And some of them have given feedback to me, at the end, which is basically like, the mirror work was really difficult, or I wish there was less mirror work. So my question to you is really about, how do you help women to really awaken into themselves, feel empowered in the body that they're in, and really get to know themselves on a deeper level, because I really feel that when we can learn to do that, then we can start to do what we came here to do. Because up until then, there can be a lot of excuses, right? Like, I don't look the way that I'm meant to, or when I lose 5 pounds, I'll do it. Or I'm not a good public speaker yet because I don't like the shape that I'm in. So as soon as I get right, it's almost like tomorrow never comes kind of idea. Thoughts on that?
So one of the reasons why I absolutely love walls is that they teach us about authenticity. So the way that walls work is they're amazing at teamwork and they're part of a pack. And what makes the pack work is the fact that they're all contributing what they are. So you get packs, members of the pack that are really good at hunting. Some are good at, nurturing. So they'll be the babysitter. Some are kind of really good at showing and teaching the pups, and others are really good at paving a way in the snow. There'd be no point putting that little pup wolf at the front of the pack when they're trying to go through a snowdrift, because it would just go around in circles and get lost. So that the bigger wolves that are at the front, they're there not because of the alphas, they're just there because that's what they can contribute. um it's their uniqueness, their difference, which is what they're contributing. And without that, that part is needed in the pack. It's almost like a body. We can't all be hands, we can't all be feet, we can't all be the eyes. We all contribute something completely different. And I think what happens is we are taught to fear different, where that difference will be what sets us apart, and therefore it goes back really primitive, that if we're set apart, then we'll be put out of the pack, we'll be left to die. It all comes back to this death,
Yes.
we'll be burnt at the stake. That difference, we've got this fear of death. And so we learn to fear our own difference. But if we can remember that our difference, actually, if we come down to it, essentially is all we have. We can only do ourselves. That's the best that we can contribute, is our difference. And I think that it's remembering that we are here in this body. Like, you weren't somebody else. If you were meant to be that other person, you would have incarnated as that other person.
Yeah.
What makes you special is your difference. Nobody can speak like you can speak, nobody looks like you can speak, and all the ways that you look, the ways that you act, your skills, your knowledge, your experience comes together like baking a cake, all these magical ingredients that makes you completely unique. And actually it's that uniqueness that is needed. So as part of the pack, say if there were no wolves that could hunt in that pack, they would all die. They need someone that can do that role. And so you're needed as well, the way that you are,
Mm.
because your bit fits in a certain way. It's doing something in particular that only you can do. So actually you're doing a disservice, not just yourself, but humanity, to the planet, to the cosmos, by not playing your part. And your part is completely based around how you look and what you do. Yeah, but I
Mm.
understand about the body shame. It is a really difficult thing, for men and women
Yeah.
to go through. And I think it's something that I say to my dancers, practice makes progress. It's practicing things like self-love and self-care. And again, it's all, we talk about things in theory, again, like we were saying, knowledge and wisdom. Well, and in theory, we can say, oh, I love you, I love my body, it's amazing. But we need action, love and action to match that. So we
Mhm.
need the body to match that, the physical actions. And when you practice that and keep practicing it, and it's the small things, even like, we think about self-love and self-care, self-adoration, devotion as huge, as big things, like big acts of love, that we have to make like we would to our partner. But even brushing your teeth every day is an act of self-love and self-devotion. You're saying, my teeth matter, I matter, my health matters. And maybe you just do that and you disregard it. But that, it's a huge thing. That is an act of self-love. So I think we put the pressure on, don't we? And say it should be this and it should be that. But actually we are loving ourselves. We are doing the little things, and keep practicing those little things.
Yeah, I think it's important, like you're talking about, because it's really those small aligned actions that really lead to bigger changes. And like you're talking about, you might brush your teeth or floss your teeth and think it's not a big deal, but there are a lot of people who don't even do that, or who don't floss their teeth, who don't recognize that those are parts of the journey of embracing the shape that you're in and the body that you're in. And I guess, dressing in a way that you feel comfortable, that supports your form, not maybe the form that you used to be or the form that you want to be, but the form that you're in right now, or even taking time to eat properly or drink enough water. Those are small things. I will say that I was going to ask you a question about how do you go from thinking these things to really knowing them and feeling them. And then I had this vision, and I don't know if this is part of the work that you do, so I'd love to hear, but I had this vision of almost doing like affirmations, but then saying the affirmations and then dancing the affirmations into our body. So is that part of the work that you do? Or why did I get
So
that
again,
picture?
yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Because I think this is what I mean about love in action. Like, and sometimes it can feel really silly and a bit fake just saying, oh, I love you in the mirror. I mean, that might work for some people.
Yeah.
But for me, and I like doing that, it feels good. But I think actually love is showing up. You can say I love you however many times you want, but if your actions don't match that, it's about showing up and doing something in your body. And I think like one of the things with wolves again is that they all use different, they use so many different ways to communicate, howling, whimpering, growling, whatever's authentic to them. And I think that love will have an authentic way of being in your body. Some people call it love languages, in the way that
Yes.
we kind of communicate love. And we think about this always in terms of our partners, but what is our love language of ourselves as well?
Mm.
Some people will require, kind of feeling it in a certain way or doing a certain thing, like giving themselves gifts. That might be their way of self-devotion, or it might be, touching themselves. That's an act of self-devotion. The words, the affirmation might work, or dancing. So dancing with themselves, moving it, that's authentic, and for me, I found that, I embody through movement. Like dancing is how I assimilate, is how I ground it, how I like to deeply connect into the feelings in my body. So I'm a very kind of feeling person. So things like I will know something's wrong because I will get like a deep kind of thing in my room where it'll like contract. But that's me. Some people they'll react in a different way, but it's learning, I think, your own love language and how that expresses, through your body. What do you need to do? How do you need to act? And that can be very, very different. I said,
Wow.
for me, it is the dentist, because I'm petrified of the dentist, and the thought of going is like the most courageous act for me. Like I could talk in front of 5,000 people and it doesn't faze me, but going to the dentist does. So for me, it's my biggest act of self-devotion, whereas for other people, it could be something different. It could be going to sleep early. It could be the affirmations in the mirror. It could be dancing, whatever works. And you have to find that again through practice,
Mm. I
trying
love how you were talking
it.
earlier about, it's okay to be different and how we're all here to play the role that we're playing. And I think that, very often in society, we're really encouraged in a way to compare ourselves to other people or to look at people who have maybe made it and emulate them and not necessarily find our own path. And it's interesting because I also am very passionate about business and sales and marketing and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things is all that I often, teach is about what's your USP, like your unique selling proposition. What is it about you that is different? And, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about how, one size doesn't fit everybody. And that's the same with everything all the time. Like some people don't like a certain thing, maybe in that form, but they might like it in another form. Or some people want to be given information in a certain way, but not in another way. And some people like belly dance and some people like ballet. Some people like the fusion of the two together. And that's what makes it such a cool world, is that we all have these different ideas. We all have different preferences. And when we allow ourselves to shine and do what we came here to do, we really do allow other people to shine their light just as brightly. So I do want to talk about the concept of limiting beliefs, because I do believe that we very often get in our own way. So I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about, how do you define a limiting belief? Is it something that we've learned? Is it something that we've inherited? Is it something that we maybe have no idea why we believe that? And do you think that when we're talking about limiting beliefs that we have to get to the root of the limiting belief, or is it just like sometimes a superficial thing?
So again, for me, it comes back to authenticity. So anything that isn't authentic will make us lesser than ourselves. So any way that we're imitating or choosing something that isn't authentic to us, whether that's inherited or whether that's through copying or whether that's through obligation or judgment or self-criticism, is leading us away from our authenticity. So I think the most important pathway that we can do is finding who we truly are, what our truth is. And again, our body will tell us every second of the way whether something is authentic or not to us. So for example, like a few years ago, I was kind of in this position where I was made redundant, and I was kind of going through in my mind, like, you know, what do I do next? Like, I don't know how to go forward. And I knew what I should do. And if should ever comes up, that it should be an alarm bell. Like, if you say should, that's like, whoa, you need to listen. Like, that's already, that's a thing that's saying you probably shouldn't. But,
That's
I
actually
was like
cool. Like
thinking,
should is a gateway word to, something else. Like there's something else there because, we're often, a lot of people will say, myself included, oh, we want to remove that word from the dictionary in our brains. But at the same time, if we go, oh, actually, I'm going to turn should into a gateway of mindfulness to go,
yeah.
what is my head voice telling me to do? My head voice is saying that I should do blah, blah, blah. So that means there's something here for me to explore. I love that. I just wanted to explore
Yeah,
that
no,
further for a second. That's so good.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been a ringing bell. Whenever I've said should, it means that I probably shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
It's always like, because I think about authenticity. So that should, I mean, just think about the word should now. Just say it to yourself and see how that feels in your body. There's probably some kind of resistance. I don't know where you feel it, but for me, I feel it in my chest.
Yeah, I
So I
feel it in
feel
my
it like
chest
a
too.
coming in. Yeah, so it's a
Totally.
closing in.
Yes.
Just that word should. So it's an obligated. Now, if you really wanted to do it, that should wouldn't even come up, so it kind of I said with this authenticity. So if you, when you're listening to your body and feeling that, with that should just as an example, then that's going to help you recognize when it's a limiting, when it's a limiting belief, when it's something that's not authentic. You will feel it in your body. And there's so many different ways that you can listen. So my body, like for me, it comes into my heart literally caves in whenever I think of something that's limiting, so it's not authentic. I think sometimes our heart can allow us to do things maybe that are self-limiting. I think our body gives us probably the best signal. Our mind definitely can go for the logical and definitely goes for the self-limiting thoughts, because it tries to understand, it tries to comprehend, and this is where the knowledge is. It's working things out, but the wisdom's in the body. But I do think they all have to work together and contribute. So the mind would recognize perhaps it's a self-limiting thought. It would go, aha, okay, I've heard that word should. And then you would feel that in your body, how you're reacting to what you've just said. And then perhaps then you can take that moment to then connect to your higher self that would let you know how to proceed forward with that. Yeah, so I think it's a
It's a
I don't know,
combination.
for me, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it's
I
interesting because
it's
you're
all
talking about, oh, go ahead. You go.
no, I was going to say it's like all the tools in our toolbox, and
Yeah.
we've got all these different ways that our body, our soul, our mind, our heart, they all have an opinion and they all have a perspective on everything. But actually, also when we say self-limiting belief, that's already a judgment. Just saying that is a judgment. We've decided that's what it is, full stop, and we've created something. So I think by labeling that, like, for me, I kind of really struggle with labels. I think that labels kind of box something. So we kind of, it's so easy for us to go into kind of judgment and conditions, and we go, oh, that's a really self-limiting thought. Well, is it? Or are we making it that? Or have we decided it's that? What if it's not? What if it's a warning? And this is when we can come back to our body. So actually, if we have told ourselves, oh, that's a self-limiting thought, but actually it feels good in our body, maybe it isn't. So I think,
Yeah.
it's,
It's just
we
funny
could be
because
talking for hours about this.
yeah, but I guess Yeah, I'm just noticing all of the little pieces, that you're kind of throwing in, because it's funny, for where, you and I are probably similar, been working on a lot of this stuff for a long time. So, mindfulness is kind of second nature, or when we're not being mindful, we're aware of it. Being in the body in a way is second nature. Definitely for you, something that I've been working on, and improving on every day. But one of the things that I guess I want to talk about is like, so you're talking a lot about body wisdom. And so for me, because I'm a medium, I also am clairsentient, which you would be as well, and empathic. So we feel a lot of stuff, and I can feel in my body, when I'm connecting to a soul, for example, who's passed, I can feel a lot of things in my body that belong to them. So I have been working at understanding, number one, how I feel in my body before I'm connecting with the soul, and then how I feel when I'm connecting with that soul, because then I'm able to ascertain what doesn't belong to me, because I did almost an inventory of how I felt before. Do you think that a big part about, I guess tuning into your body is also having those key moments as we navigate our day to kind of maybe question and ask ourselves, well, how am I feeling right now? Because a lot of us have anxiety. A lot of us are kind of in a flight or fight response, right? Fear of death, all those sort of things. A lot of us are kind of going through in our the day in our mind, and we're not always coming back into our body, or we're not looking at our body's anxiety, or the things that our body is showing up for us as maybe warning signs or clues, or almost like a little navigational system that it's letting us know. So how do you kind of start does it come down to being mindful? I mean, would you say tapping into the body wisdom is almost the first step, or does mindfulness have to come first so that you can be aware that you're not in your body initially? Because I don't know, can you do both at the same time? Yeah. So just that simple
I think,
question.
I mean, why not? Anything's possible. And I think they do need to work together. There's benefits and gifts from both the mind and the body. They both contribute something different, so our body is kind of given us our instinct, it's given us our physical reaction, which we can interpret. And then a mind is kind of given us kind of, memories and things like that we can also access. So they can work together. But I do think that actually, especially in our modern day and age, that our disconnection from our body is more so than our disconnection from our mind. So I do think the answer just does lie in the body. I mean, you're in your body all the time. Like there's no point when you're not in your body. You are a physical being. You're not a spirit, although you are a soul in a body, if that makes sense. But you're not just a spirit, is what I'm trying to say. So it's always there, and it's constantly communicating with you every single second. It is sending you signals, it's talking to you, it's trying to have a conversation. And I think the mindfulness can contribute in that we can come into stillness. We can choose with our minds, right now I'm going to take 2 seconds, and I think, say, let's use food as an example. Say you were to come and eat something. Just before you eat that thing, use your mindfulness, your mind, to bring yourself into your body, to give yourself the structure, that kind of masculine kind of way, of that boundary of these 5 minutes, or even less, 5 seconds. I am going to be still with this piece of food. And then you're going to hold that piece of food and look at that piece of food. You're going to maybe smell it. You're going to look at it, see it, take all of it in with your eyes, all of your senses. You're then going to feel how your body reacts. So is your body contracting? Is your body opening? Is it excited? Are you turned on? Or actually you feeling really heavy from that? And then you can offer the gift of those reactions and then send them back to the mind, and the mind can then reflect on that and go, okay, well, what does this mean? Maybe even invite the heart into that conversation, and the heart's like, okay, well, I feel really heavy because I know that this isn't good for me. And, then, you feel other things coming up. So I think the mind can complement, facilitate the body, and the other way around as well, So if the mind's overrunning, so it's going, I shouldn't eat that, I shouldn't eat that, I shouldn't eat that. step away from the food for a minute, walk around the block, put on your favorite music, dance, and then see if you want that piece of food.
Yeah,
So they
totally.
definitely work together. I don't think
Yeah.
it should be one or the other. I don't think we should kind of reject anything. Just see what's possible. Anything and
Mm.
everything is possible. Just
Yeah, but I
just be
guess it's
open and
taking the time
be
to see
curious.
your own truth within that, I suppose. Are you really in the
Mhm.
body? Are you really in the mind? Are you seeing the fusion of the two? Are you taking the space to really sit within that, within your own body, and then, of course, in your mind? I like that a lot. And one of the things too, I will say, is that I love your idea about, if you're feeling like, oh, I shouldn't eat, let's just say a piece of cake, because that's a pretty easy thing for people to go, I don't know if I should eat this cake, this piece of cake or whatever. I love the idea of maybe stepping away for a minute and going and doing something that's going to raise your vibration, because I believe personally we should never do anything if we're not really authentically in it or feeling good, because then we're going
Yeah.
to end up eating guilt or doing something that's
Mm-hmm.
really going to shame ourselves. So if you're going to eat that piece of cake, do it from a place of feeling good and being excited about the opportunity that you have this, versus
Mm-hmm.
feeling shameful. So I love that a
Yeah.
lot. What are some of
And
the
actually,
block?
it's oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, sometimes when we want that piece of cake, it's actually indicating that we do want something, and it might not actually be that piece of cake. So this is why it's good to kind of have that moment. Like, for me, kind of like cake, sugar in general is my go-to if I'm feeling lonely.
Right.
And I've come to recognize that from just stopping and engaging with the cake. Are you
Yeah.
my best friend, cake? No,
Yeah.
you're not. But
No, you're
like
only
it
here
can
for
be
two
real.
seconds.
No, exactly. But it can be a really good indication that you are actually wanting something. So it's not bad at all. That's the thing that I don't like, is when people like say, "Oh, I'm really bad for wanting that cake," and it's like, no, you're feeling something, and your
Yeah.
feelings are valid. Every single feeling you have is valid. Nothing is wrong. Like, you cannot be wrong. You are feeling something there, and that feeling again is a signpost to something. So do you actually need to walk around the block? Do you want some self-pleasure? Do you need to go and talk to your best friend, instead of talking to the cake?
Yeah.
Whatever. I think that,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. Can you have a cup of tea and maybe read a good book for a minute if you're looking for that? If
Mhm.
you're feeling lonely, for
Yeah.
example, can you dive into a book that, with some of your friends? That's how I feel about my books. I'm like, oh, my friends are over here. Yeah.
Definitely.
What are some of the usual blocks or struggles that you see in the people that you work with, in overcoming or being comfortable with being who they are here in the form that they're in?
So I think with my clients and students, probably the biggest one that we've had is trust, and trusting self, and trusting
Yeah.
life, and trusting the universe. I mean, we're are constantly told that we need to seek permission from other people. So when we're younger, we need permission from our parents to do things. We can only learn what our teachers tell us. We need permission to go somewhere. We have to be in here, and we have to be in and there. And these boundaries and structures are there for our benefit, to protect us, but also we learn to wait for permission from other people.
Mhm.
And so we start seeking that permission all the time. As an adult, we kind of are waiting for other people to offer us validation, and we learn to kind of mistrust ourselves and our own inner authority. So I see this as the biggest thing that comes up. Like, often people come to me, are like, yeah, I want to heal, I want to sort this out, and I'm like, well, why haven't you done it already? And they're like, oh, I'm kind of waiting for my mum, or
Yeah.
we get to the bottom of it. They're kind of like, oh, well, I'll only do this, but when this happens, or they come down to it, when we work through it with the flower essences and things, it always comes down to they are waiting permission because they don't trust themselves. And I think part of that as well is that if you trust yourself, then you are fully responsible for your
Mm.
actions and your thoughts. And a lot of people don't want to take responsibility, because then it's all on them. and that's a courageous thing to be doing, to own yourself and to own what you're doing, and to say it's okay to make mistakes. We're so worried about being wrong again. We're from childhood, about being told off. We're scared of being told off, of being wrong. But actually, I think the thing that I work with most of my clients is coming into a place where it's okay to be wrong, and then actually transforming that word wrong, knowing that you can't be wrong. Everything is just a lesson. Everything is
Yeah.
learning. Everything is a contribution. There's a gift in everything. Everything experience that we go through, even the really negative and horrible and messy and kind of shitty things, they have a lesson there. They have a
Yeah.
gem we can take away from them. So there's no wrongness. So we just need to trust that we are capable, that we can do it. And again, it sounds easy, but it takes practice. Practice, practice, practice. Just try it and then try it again and then keep trying it until it becomes habit.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I know for myself, even a little while ago, I was berating myself for something that wasn't a big deal at all. And I remember I kind of like had this conversation with myself. I was walking around my property and I'm like, wanting to just kind of let it go. And I remember I said to myself, I was like, why is it that it's always interesting when you have these conversations with yourself, by the way. But I was thinking, why am I looking at this as the end of the world when I could be looking at it as going, oh, I guess I didn't handle that the way that I probably will next time. Okay, la, 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 let it go. Why is it that we get into these spiraling sort of situations and scenarios? And I think a big part of that is, so I did some soul searching a while ago as well in terms of the ego. And I was like, okay, so why does the ego make things into bigger stories or make up lies or create these scenarios that never happen? What is it about it? And Spirit's always talking to me, so I thank them for this. But they're like saying that, well, the ego does that to get your attention. Because when you are enraptured and wrapped up in some story or some shame spiral or some kind of idea of how things, let's bring that should have been word back, or how we could have done things differently, and how, what we do is we're taking ourselves out of the present moment, which is our present position of power, right? We're not listening to our body's wisdom anymore. We're not noticing that our bodies, all of a sudden, our heart's starting to alight as we're like turning left. We're not noticing that we're following some sort of golden breadcrumb there. And we're not noticing when we get a little bit of anxiety and we've turned right instead of going left. We're out of the, we're not noticing that. We're not noticing those moments where maybe a spirit, like our guides will give us a sign or something like that. A lot of us have these little private omens that we have that are our guides use to kind of navigate us. We're not noticing the beautiful wolf picture that's just gone by on the bus for some kind of advertisement to let us know that we're safe and we're part of the pack. And I think that, when we have the ego that's really making up these scenarios, it takes us away from our present position of power. And yeah, I just love how you're bringing that up. You're kind of saying that, it's not about having a solution for it right now, but it's about noticing and then giving ourselves permission to just not have everything figured out and to continue to grow and work on it every single day. And then, like you said, eventually one day it'll be second nature because we'll have been doing all of these little micro aligned steps to take us to where we want to be.
Yeah, I mean, life is an experience. I kind of think of it as a dance. We're learning the choreography as we go along, and we might, like when I'm creating choreography for my students, I might do something, then we get to class and actually it doesn't work, because the
Yeah.
key sticks are different, or they're not okay with that move yet, or and that's fine. We just change, we evolve, we pivot, and it's funny because as you were just saying what you were saying, like the image that came to my mind in my head was like, when watching my cat the other day, and she just stuck her leg up in the air and started licking her lady bits. And she wasn't bothered like what I thought. She was just not thinking like, oh, I might fall off the sofa, or what's Rachel thinking of me? Like she can see my bottom. But she was just there, just enjoying it, being in the moment. And I thought like, gosh, imagine all the things that would go through my head if I just like started doing that in the middle of like, a cafe or something. Like I'd be thinking, what would people think of me, whatever. I mean, I probably wouldn't even get my leg up in the first place.
Yeah.
But I just, when you were saying that, then I was just thinking, like, animals are such an example, of how to be in the moment.
Yeah.
Like life is an experience, and I truly believe that our purpose as humans is to just exist, to just be here. Our destinies may be about how we express ourselves and what we're uniquely meant to do, but I think our purpose is just to
Yeah.
just be human, to be in this experience. We might come back as a cat and experience the pleasure of licking oneself wherever you want. But for this experience, you are a human, and
Mhm.
with all that goes along with that, every single aspect, none of it's wrong. It's all there to be experienced, and it all contributes.
Yeah. I saw on Instagram a little while ago this quote, and it just said, "Yikes. Oh well, there's always tomorrow." I just thought that was the best, because it just
Yeah.
allows you to see the lightness and the ease and within stuff, like our
Mhm.
mind makes things so much more serious than they need to be. Whereas if
Yeah,
we just
yeah.
go, oh, yikes, oh, well, there's always tomorrow. And then we could just keep on rocking it, as
Well,
opposed to
exactly.
going in
Yeah.
a shame spiral, which kind of traps a lot of us for periods of time.
Yeah. I mean, what is the worst that could happen? Like I know like a lot of my dancers, they come in thinking, worrying about when they first start out, like, oh, I'm a bit nervous about kind of dancing. And I kind of say to them, what's the worst that could happen? You know, what truly think about it. What is the worst that could happen? You come here and you have a dance, you have a moment of feeling a little bit, but what's the worst
Yeah.
thing that could happen in this situation? Actually, like you said, their brain has created like this long story, like really evolved. It shows how creative we are as humans. Like,
Totally.
all this stuff that could happen. You're like, wow, you're like, whoa, you're just in class. You're here to dance, enjoy your body.
Yeah.
No biggie.
Yeah.
Just be
And
here.
everyone
It's
here is
okay.
doing it
It really
too,
is.
right? They're not all looking at you. They're
Yeah,
actually in their
exactly.
own body figuring this out for themselves on their own journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we need to talk about the subject of wolves now. And I know I've kind of left like a huge subject to the end, which isn't cool of me. But I mean, so you've written two books about wolves. You're really talk a lot about the wolf archetype. You talk about embodying wolf energy, wolf spirit. So before we get to that, because I know there's so many lessons to be learned within the wolves, and actually, even as I do that, I can feel like you just got really excited. I think you're like, yay, girl, finally, finally, What is it about wolves? And have you always been attracted to the subject, or did wolves somehow
Mm.
find you? How did it all kind of begin?
So it's funny actually, because when people like ask me, they assume that my favorite animal is wolves, and it's not actually. My favorite animals are actually lions. I'm a big cat person. But like for me, like the lion has always been like my masculine kind of energy, and for
Mm.
me the wolf has always been a way for me to connect to my feminine. So the more that I've come into my feminine self, the more I've connected to the wolf, because for me, like, and the wolf is about that primal untamed self, so kind of for me, really, my first major initiation with wolves was through the mythology of the goddess Lupa. So she's the goddess I wrote my first book about. Um, and for her, she came at that time when I was talking about before, where I didn't know, where to go after I was made redundant. And I found myself in a really dark cave. And I read her mythology where she took the founders of ancient Rome down into the cave and initiated them there. And I was like, wow, this is where I am. And like, if I mean, this is the way that I tick, but if I'm like, say, reading a book and something stands out to me like a name, I see that again as a signpost. And she kept coming up again and again and again. And I was like, well, there's a reason for that. So I read her mythology, and I just got, it was so relevant at that time. Like, I believe that, like, whatever you call it, divine deity, God, goddess, spirits, whatever, they will align with you, when you're ready. So they will come and they will kind of be there with you for that particular moment to share their particular gifts and teachings. Perhaps they'll stay with you, perhaps they're a lifetime guide or just a momentary guide. But
Mhm.
um, for me, wolves have been about this again, like the three principles of my Wolf Woman Rising school, which is about authenticity, trust, and courage. For those three have been my biggest lessons, and that's therefore what I teach. And those are the lessons that I think that wolves embody the most and can teach us the most about. So I mean, I adore them. I could talk about them for hours. Both,
Yeah.
the wolf in real life and also wolf spirit, wolf archetypes, guardians, deities. There's a huge wealth of knowledge there that we can transform into our own wisdom.
Yeah, I love how, you also talked about in your book where you're talking about how you can see women almost embody the wolf spirit. And that's when they really stand up and they are expressing their freedom and their integrity, and then they're seeking alignment with their truth. And, I know that like societal pressure and judgments of those around us can really interfere with that. But one of the things that I love about embracing or looking at animal spirits, not only wolves, is that we can draw on their characteristics, draw on their energy. I remember many, many years ago, I don't know where I learned this, but someone was talking about the masculine and the feminine, and how when you're really wanting to kind of mix the two together in a balanced way, and I don't really know if it's like 50-50 at all, right? It's just balanced for whatever it is for you at that moment, depending on what you need it for. But I remember the person was teaching me, they're like, look at someone in your life who embodies the masculine and the feminine in a way, and then see whether or not you can emulate some of that, not copy, but almost be inspired by it. But I love the idea how when you have an archetype like the wolf, that there's like this kind of energy that you can tap into, that you can then embody into your own life, such as courage, such as leadership, such as can you talk a little bit about that process? Because I think that as women, and we're talking about women here, so if you're a man listening, you're still included in the conversation. It's just that, I know that your book talks a lot about women as well, standing up and becoming these leaders of their pack. And I think that for a long time, we were sort of shied away from doing that, again, probably from fear of death.
Yeah. So one of the things that most intrigues me about the wolf pack is that the alpha is actually the she-wolf. So every pack is made of an alpha female and an alpha male, and they'll be the parents of that pack, and then all their puppies are like the rest of the pack. But it's a she-wolf that will lead, and she leads in a way in that she'll make decisions. So she'll kind of be the authority and the decider. So she'll listen to her intuition, her knowledge and her wisdom, and then she'll kind of go like, okay, I want to go over there now, and then her wolf, her alpha wolf, will be like, okay, I'll totally sort that for you. So he'll facilitate that, and she'll dream, and then he will like kind of like dream it awake. He'll kind of turn it into physical. So they're a great example of how the masculine and the feminine can work in that way. So the father wolf, will create the boundaries, so the female wolf is able to birth inside, and they can be a really great example of how the masculine and the feminine works. So the masculine, I felt that it is like a bank, and the female is like the river that runs through. So we need solid banks, as the inner masculine. So this will be our structure, our discipline, our action, to allow that feminine flow to come through. And, wolves are kind of a primary example of that. And if you look at kind of in nature, nature should be our first example because it's unpolluted and it's unchanged. We kind of bit disconnected a bit. So if we look at nature as our example, even just like look at all the male birds, it's always the male that makes the effort. Like he always goes out of his way, like he'll organize the day, and he'll bring her a present, and then he'll court her and all this. And like even like modern dating is a bit like requiring the female to kind of chase after the male, whereas the egg is receptive. She waits there. She sits there on her throne and waits for the sperm to come to the egg, and she's there embodied, and like she knows her worth and she stands in her value. She doesn't need to chase. I think that nature shows us that this is a way that masculine and feminine works. And I'm not talking just biological, because we all have masculine and feminine within us.
Yeah.
We're all kind of like a different levels. And I believe that we have emotional gender and physical gender, and they're two very different things. But we all contain the masculine and feminine in different proportions. So some of us will be kind of know our feminine better or know our masculine better, and they do need to work together. And wolves are a great example, not of just that working in a partnership, but of that working in a pack context as well. Again, this authenticity and uniqueness, how we all contribute our different way of expressing that, as well.
In your book, you said that she, Lupa, is a guardian of alchemy that will support you in turning base metal into gold. That is your woundings and fears into gifts and purpose. So when you're talking about understanding the wolf pack, you're talking about understanding the alpha, male and female. You're talking about understanding, in a way, the roles that we play, the female being the visionary, in a way, the creator, and then the male being the one that goes and brings everything into fruition, in a way, into the physical.
Yeah.
I guess I'm sort of wondering, how is it that we can take that spirit and work with it in our own lives? So for example, if I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I really want to tap into my purpose, but I'm afraid of doing this interview or something like that, right? So do you sort of sit and you call on the energy of maybe Lupa, or of like a strong wolf vibe, and then you just sort of sit with that? Do you look at pictures of wolves? Do you howl for a little bit and try to feel a little bit about that? Do you look at wolves running? Yeah. Is it all of those things? It's really a lot about that conscientious intention. Do you have to go in meditation? Yeah. Sort of, how do you kind of facilitate that energy to come through you to help you to, turn base metal into gold, for example?
Yeah. So, and I think I'm going to sound like a tape repeating here, but authenticity again, and being authentic in every moment. What you're going to need in every moment is going to be different. So, sometimes we go and we label ourselves like, I'm the meditator, I am the dancer. Like, kind of people sometimes do label me as dancing, like, you must always dance. I'm like, actually, sometimes what I need is stillness, so sometimes what I need is reading. So I mean, in my books, I kind of give different ways to connect to different wolf archetypes. So say if you were to work, you wanted to embody the energy of the wolf pup, which is about playfulness, about pleasure, about learning how to be excited by the world again, about reigniting that joy. You might be wanting to do something that's a little bit more lively, that's including things like touch, especially. And then if you were looking at, say, embodying, say, father wolf, he's really about kind of enforcing boundaries. So the father wolf will go out and scent mark the boundaries. So for him, you might want to be looking at structure. So he might be the type of energy you want to embody. If, say, you wanted to timetable in some self-care, and then the female wolves are going to help you with that intuitive, like actually aligning with what it is that you want to, say, put in, as the things you're going to do in that structured time. So they all kind of contribute differently. And then I work in my second book also with the elemental wolves. So wolves in the real world, you have coastal wolves, we have wolves that are in the forest, wolves that can be in the cave, and they're embodying different elements. And again, that offers different pathways again. So if you were to work more in the air realms, with the elder wolves, you'd be doing maybe things more like meditation with the wolves, visualizing with the wolves. Mother and father wolf, you might be more kind of like, feeling into your body, doing movement. And then the lone wolf might be, if you're embodying that energy, or you want to at this time in your life, or for a particular reason or a particular healing, the lone wolf would do its work alone, whereas the other wolves might work in a pack. She might want community work, so it's kind of going to vary, and it's about discerning what it is that you need. And so you'd be like, okay, this is where I am, this is what I need right now, this is where I want to go, this is my aim, or this is what I need to heal. And then you would look at your kind of find the pathway that fits with that. So being discerning, and saying, this is what resonates most, and I'll try that. Sometimes like howling is what is most needed, but actually then for sometimes not howling is what's needed. So say if you're, take anger as an example, If you're someone that's withheld your anger, you've held it back a lot and you've not expressed that anger, howling is possibly what you need, like really loud, opening up the throat chakra. As if you're someone that is constantly shouting and arguing and just the fire spills out, you actually probably need to come back into stillness and not howl, and learn to soothe that, by being in the quiet and actually maybe choosing to learn and express whimper rather than howl. So it's gonna, you've got to really get curious and just see what's really present, and work with what you've got in that moment. Like we were saying before, what am I feeling now? Where am I now? Forget about the precedents or, what you did before or what you think you should do. Just now, what do you need right now, without judgment, without conditions, even if it's not what you normally do, it's not what you expect, what do you need right now?
Yeah, I love that. And so it sounds to me in a way that you were really drawn to lions, which led to wolves. And then you started to almost unpack a lot of that. It's almost as though you went, okay, like what is it about this that's really drawing me in? And then as you explored the different facets of the way that the pack works and the different roles that, the different wolves play within the pack, that you were able to also see that by embodying some of these different characteristics, you can really almost it's almost like the whole wolf pack lives within you in a way, right? And then you're like, which role, which part of the pack am I being right now? So do you kind of encourage people that if somebody has a real affinity for like birds, or I know a lot of people are snake people, a lot of people are dog people, which we could say is connected as well to the wolf pack, to maybe kind of do some self-exploration to see what is it about that particular animal that maybe is wanting to connect with you, get to know you a little bit better, and are there characteristics and things that you can bring into your own life to start to harness that? Because I think a big part of working with archetypes is understanding that we can learn to embody these different characteristics and skills and abilities to be able to become more realized in a way, right? Because we're not all necessarily born with courage right away. Sometimes we are, but then it's dampened over time and we have to learn to express that. So if you could almost play the role of something that's embodying that courage, it allows you to do that almost like we're acting in a way, and then it becomes our truth.
Yeah, I definitely think we're attracted to things for a reason, so if you you might have a really favorite animal. Or have you ever considered, why is there something in your life that you're meant to embody it, or you're meant to learn from it in this lifetime, and even stages throughout your life? Like when I've looked back on my life, there's been certain stages where I've been like obsessed with, like, say, pigs, and then frogs, and then there's kind of been animals. And if I look back and say my journals, I'm like, well, that animal and its characteristics actually makes sense for what I was going through at that time. I mean, the she-wolf for me very much came forward when I'd been embracing my sensuality, my primal wild feminine that just like is just untamed. She's shaking the rules and she's just going out and doing what is authentic. She very much came forward for that. If I was needing something else, and there might be another animal that I would be drawn to, and I do think we have some, almost like I call them our spiritual counsel, which are maybe our deities or our guides, our guardian angels that are particular to us. I think we also have animals that are particular to us as well. Even flowers as well, the flower essences. I always get people that always have a favorite flower, and when they learn the healing of it, they're like, whoa, that's like my life path. There's a reason why we're drawn to it. It draws in, it attracts us, even if it's the color or the sounds, the characteristic. There'll just be something. If you find yourself kind of like, normally when you say you've got a favorite animal, I don't know if your relatives do this, but they start buying you everything. Like
when you said pigs, I was like, oh God, because I mentioned one time in passing when I was 13, something that and I got pig slippers and pig house coat and pig pajamas and pig. I was like, they make pig earrings? Yes, they do. Like,
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? But like, I think it's like, that's really like dropping a hint. Like, you need to look at what this animal means right now. So universe be like, really like, God, like you need to work with this. But it does make me laugh that you like, don't mention your favorite animal to anyone, otherwise you'll get everything.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And that is so true. You know, when you were talking earlier too, and I know we're going to wrap up in a second here, but you know, just about embracing, you know, the she wolf, like I was thinking about, okay, like what about in my own life? Where have I been drawn to an animal or something? And I remember I was going through some stuff and I really wanted, you know, a sign and I ended up getting a new, 4 new spirit guides, which were dragons. And I remember even just going for my walk and feeling them around me. And I just felt so confident and powerful because I was like, I got my team here. I'm not just walking alone. And I know we're not alone. And the big motivation for for this podcast is to remind people that we're not alone. Like I always say, that's what this podcast is about. And when I felt that energy around me, I felt brave. I felt courageous. I felt like I could take on the world and that my dragon sister was like firing legit with fire anything in front of me that wasn't going to serve me. And it made me feel just so awesome. So I can totally see how powerful it is when you're being intentional and you're allowing those messages and the embodiment of that to come through. You really can turn metal into gold with that kind of intention.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's allowing yourself to receive. It's asking for help, and I think asking for help is hugely courageous. We're expected as women to always be kind of self-sufficient and self-supporting, and allowing ourselves to be supported and helped. And even sometimes, like, you sit back and let that dragon just like do that work for you. Sometimes that's what you actually need to do, is allowing yourself to be supported in so many ways as well. Like you can't take too much from your guides, like in the divine, that their love is unconditional and unlimited. And it's us that says, oh, I can only have this much, I'm only allowed this much, I only deserve this much. Whereas actually, your potentiality is huge, and there's so much out there to support and guide you. There's no reason why you can't connect to 50 different animals and have them the whole lot all in line behind you, as you're walking down the street.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So beautiful. Well, thank you, Rachel, so much for being here. It's been a really interesting, fascinating conversation. And I will say to our listener at home as well, that if you are interested in learning a little bit more as well about flower essences to heal, maybe liaise with Rachel, because we didn't talk about that today, but I will say that I haven't worked with Rachel on that subject, but I use flower essences almost every day in my own life. And for me, they've just been a huge game changer. So I really, advocate that kind of work. So is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to bring up? And also, how can people get a hold of you? And I'll put links to your website as well in the show notes.
Yeah, no, I think we covered loads of yummy things. We could talk for hours. I think, like, I wish these podcasts would go on for days. But
I know.
So no. I mean, if anybody wants to know more, about anything that I've mentioned, they can always just get in touch. So my website is wolfwomanrising.com. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook. I have a Facebook group. We're a community there, and then there's also I'm quite active on YouTube as well. So any of those platforms, just find me at Wolf Woman Rising.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being
Come and have
here.
a chat.
Yes, so good. Thank you.